Hello everyone, welcome to known as a Drop Educational Series channel. So this channel is to educate and share knowledge of important events and hot topics. Kindly do share, support and subscribe to the channel. So today we will discuss on the current hot topic regarding the recent India-China clash at the border and also the related terms and events related to the background of the clash that include some historical events also. So, as we all know that in June, India and China had a violent clash in the Galwan Valley, so which is located at the line of actual control in the Indo-China border in Aksai Chin. So there were casualties reported on both the sides by injury caused by manual fights with weapons like nail-studded rods, stones. So there were no actually use of guns due to an agreement dated back between India and China, preventing its use by the soldiers patrolling that area. Here, like China accused India of crossing the border and getting into their territory, but India, however, has stressed that its troops did not cross the LAC and that the clash was triggered by China breaking the consensus and erecting structures on the Indian side of the line. So India said that it was a Chinese side that attacked the Indian troops in a premeditated manner following a dispute over a tent set up by the China on the Indian side of the LAC. So this was the clash that happened. So and China has been building up massive infrastructure in the recent years. So like building up roads, especially for connectivity from Tibet with other provinces, and also transporting their troops and components in that area. So what India did was India was also like trying to build up the infrastructure in that area in parity with China, especially roads and a high altitude runway for the aircrafts. So this has irritated China and has led to the recent escalation. So that was building up for quite some days now. So like as you can see, this is the Galwan Valley, so which is located on the LAC between India and China on the Aksai Chin area. So, like, what is Galwan Valley and McMohan Line? So, like, to understand this issues better and how actually, like, it was to understand the series of events, we will come to know a few terms here. So, first thing is like Galwan Valley. So, this is a valley located at the line of actual control. So, like, where the river Galwan flows from the disputed Aksai Chin region that is controlled by China to the Ladakh Union Territory region of India. So it originates on the eastern side of the Karakoram range and it's one of the upstream tributaries of the Indus River. And what is McMahon Line? So McMahon Line is the demarcation line between Tibet and the northeastern region of India, proposed by the British colonial administrator McMahon at the 1914 Shimla Convention, signed between the then British and the Tibetan representatives. So it is like considered as a legal boundary between China and India. So the McMahon Line is regarded as by India as the legal national border, but China rejects this Shimla Accord and the McMahon Line due to the Tibet issue under the ancient Chinese land claim. So basically, China tells that Tibet was that the then Tibet had no power to come into agreements between with India, and also like they also claim these regions to be under the ancient Chinese territory, and hence they reject this McMahon line. So what is LAC? So LAC is basically the line of actual control, similar to LOC, line of control with Pakistan. So like here, this LAC is a loose demarcation line that separates Indian controlled territory from the Chinese controlled territory in the Sino-Indian border. So like the term was first used by Zhou Enlai in 1959, letter to the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. So it is subsequently referred to the line formed after 1962 Sino-Indian War, and it is part of ongoing Sino-Indian border dispute. As you can see, the line of actual control is the border that is being claimed by China, like post. Claiming the territories towards it, and like it actually forms the demarcation line currently. So, where is Akshay Chin? So, we will find some insights to the Akshay Chin area. So, it is a disputed area similar to the Northwest Kashmir. That lies on the this lies actually in the northeast of it, like Ladakh region, between the Indian Union Territory of Ladakh and the Chinese controlled Tibet Autonomous Region. So, it is almost the size of Bhutan. So, most of it is in occupation of China, which captured the region during the 1950s and consolidated its military grip over the area during the 1962 India-China War, so rejecting all the Indian attempts to settle border disputes peacefully. So it is a cold desert. It is not, a prosperous region. It's a cold desert that does not receive rain or snow, but does not have any valuable resources identified. Mostly uninhabited. Its water resources are mainly from Karakash River and the brackish lakes. So during the times of British rule in India, a treaty was signed in 1842 between the rulers of Tibet and the Kashmir, confirming that the Ladakh was part of the Kashmir and controlled by its government. So technically, post Kashmir annexation to India, post independence, like Akshay Chin should be part of India. China has occupied Akshay Chin, claiming that it was part of ancient and medieval Chinese empire. So it is a convenient claim from an era where the boundaries did not have the same sanctity as they do now in terms of nation states. So basically, China tells that it is part of its own area, and since 1950 it's starting to claim that region, and it consolidated its claim by occupying it during the 1962 war. So we also should know about the change of stance by China post the takeover of the communist regime there. So this Chinese communist revolution is basically happened in the mainland China as a war of liberation. It was a conflict led by the Communist Party of China and the chairman Mao Zedong, that resulted in proclamation of the People's Republic of China on 1st October 1949. Nationalist government and about 2 million nationalist sympathizers, refugees, were retreated to the island of Taiwan. So the then ruling nationalist government, they fled the mainland China and they established their government in the current existing Taiwan. So that is a different dispute that is going on between the China and the Taiwan as of now. So we should also know about the Tibet and China issue here. So Tibet has been in Chinese control since 1941. So that is post the takeover of a communist government. So they started to claim Tibet also, and they took control of it. Initially, there was a 17-point agreement that was signed between the people's government and the local government of Tibet on measures for the peaceful liberation of Tibet. So, with the delegates of 14 Dalai Lama, who was called the spiritual and also the ruler of the state of Tibet, and reached an agreement in 1951 with the Central People's Government on the newly established People's Republic of China, affirming the Chinese sovereignty over Tibet. So, expecting a good turnover of events, the then Tibetan rulers agreed to the annexation of Tibet to China. So later on, what happened, they were not happy with what was going on, and they were ruled with an iron fist. So Tibetans had growing issues and resistance against the Chinese, and the Tibetan rebellion began on 10th March 1959 in Lhasa, which had been under the effective control of the Chinese government since the 17-point agreement. So as you can see, Tibet is a very big area that was completely bordering India and China. So during this uprising, many Tibetan revolutionaries were killed by the Chinese, and China took over complete control over Tibet with a military rule, and hence the Dalai Lama and the leaders there escaped to India. India gave refuge to many Tibetans, and also they formed a government in exile here. So this basically angered China. China started not to accept the border with India and Tibet, contending that Tibet was not a sovereign state and therefore not have the power to conclude treaties. So all the treaties that was done by Tibet with the British government and also the Indians thereafter, was not considered by the Chinese government. So this basically started the issue. So then came the big Indo-China war. So these were the events that were gradually building up over a period of time since the communist regime took over, and on 1962 the war began. So the war between China and India that occurred in 1962. So Chinese disputed Himalayan border was the main cause of the war. There had been a series of violent border skirmishes between the two countries after the 1959 Tibetan uprising, when India granted asylum to the Dalai Lama. India initiated a defensive forward policy like for protecting its border. So it started patrolling on the Chinese border to hinder the Chinese military patrols and logistics, in which it placed outposts along the border, including the several North McMahon line, the eastern portion of the line of actual control. So the Chinese military action grew increasingly aggressive after India rejected proposed Chinese diplomatic settlements through 1962, 1960, and 1962. So with China recommencing previously banned forward patrols in Ladakh from 30 April 1962. So China basically started growing aggressive on these borders, and they started creating camps and occupying few areas that they contend to be part of ancient China. So China finally abandoned all the attempts of peaceful resolution on 20th October 1962, invading the disputed territory along the 3,225-kilometer borderline along the Himalayan border in Ladakh and across the McMahon line towards the east of India. So Chinese troops advanced over Indian forces, both theaters, that is the western and the eastern theaters, capturing Rezengla in Chuzul in western theater as well as the Tawang in the eastern theater. So much of the fighting took place in the harsh mountainous conditions where Indian troops were not well trained, and the Chinese had an upper hand on it. So entailing large scale combat at altitudes of over 4,000 meters. So the Sino-Indian War was also notable for the lack of deployment of naval and aerial force by either China or India. It took only on land with the both the militaries, and neither of them involved their air force or the water power there. So on 20th October, the Chinese easily took Chipchap Valley, Galwan Valley, and also Pangong Lake. Many outposts and garrisons along the western front were unable to defend against the surrounding Chinese troops. So basically, the China, since they had an upper hand with the for mountain tackling force, and also quite a bit of infrastructure there on the Tibetan side, they were able to gain an upper hand. So basically that ended favorable for the Chinese side. So coming to the international focus on the war, though many countries of the world condemned China as an aggressor, the USA and UK refused supply of China weapons to India during that time. Only the USSR came to help initially with weapons, and they supplied with quite a lot of weapons that time. So creating a good ally since then with the USSR. But the USSR on the same time had ongoing issue also called the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they were focusing on that Cold War issue, and hence they could not support India for a long time. So this basically favored China to a large extent. So coming to the end of the war, so the war ended when China declared a ceasefire on 20th November 1962 and simultaneously announced its withdrawal to its claimed line of actual control. Basically, what they did, they claimed they occupied all those areas they claimed, including the Akshay Chin and some part of the eastern theaters also. So China has reached its claim lines to the PLA and did not advance further. Zhou Enlai declared a unilateral ceasefire to start on midnight 21st November. The war took place for a month, and there were huge casualties on both the sides, and China had a victory, occupying most of the territories what it was claiming for. So that's it regarding the topics that we were discussing today. So thank you for all for watching it. Kindly share and support the channel.